Tyler Reddick took the first victory for Big Machine Racing Team in their team history with a win on Saturday. Fellow series champion William Byron, you see him up there as well, finishing right behind in second. And once again, with this, the debate was sparked on social media regarding whether or not Cup drivers should be allowed to step into the Xfinity Series and take wins away from series regulars. Now, somebody that I know very well, LASTCAR's Brock Beard, even wrote an entire op-ed this weekend saying that it's time to ban the drivers outright. And here's an excerpt from his article saying, "The time has finally come for NASCAR to make things black and white. If their intent with past rule changes has been to keep Cup drivers out of lower series, then they need to ban Cup drivers outright. Anything less will only encourage Cup teams to come up with even more workarounds to get their Cup drivers into races where they don't belong, which will remain a threat to both the identity and health of the lower series." So, like I said, we'll bring Josh back in to answer this question. Josh, I've likened this to Lewis Hamilton running an F2 race. Is it time for NASCAR to crack down on Cup drivers in Xfinity, a series whose motto is names are made here? Or is the status quo a good compromise where, it's not like 10 to 15 years ago when they could run unlimited races? We have limitations on them now, but it does still irk some fans from time to time.
I think it's about time we ban them outright. This is ridiculous. I mean, this is the junior series as well to the Cup series. There's still championships in their own right as well. And we've got some great racing in the Xfinity and in the Truck series. Yes, we have guest drivers occasionally, like who are retired Cup series racers. That is perfectly fine as well. But when you've got active Cup drivers coming in to the Xfinity series as well, it's not just unfair for those who race in the Xfinity series, it's unfair for those who race in the Cup series because they're getting more time out on the track, they're getting more time to learn the corners as well. Yes, you can argue different machinery, but it's still got a steering wheel and four wheels, and if you head out there, you're going to learn something new every single time. So I think it's very unfair. I think it's about time we get rid of it. And to be fair, it is the equivalent of Lewis Hamilton racing in Formula 2, and it's ridiculous because it's a mockery of the junior series. And what it basically says to everybody in the Xfinity series and the Truck series is that you're not good enough to be here. We're going to bring in the big guns to do your job, basically. And it's not nice. It's like being a rookie. It is literally like you get your first job. They put you on an assignment and you're feeling really proud of yourself. And then you're doing it well, nothing's wrong, but they send in the manager in order to do it for you as well. It's emotionally draining, mentally draining. It's not a good mix. So yeah, ban them outright. Keep them to their own series. You're in the Cup series. You're doing the dream. The guys below want to be where you are, and this is how they get there. Stop nicking their drives. Stop being greedy. Just leave. Keep to your own series.
And Josh, you brought up a good point about why actually the reason why you have Cup drivers in these races is to get, since we have such limited practice nowadays, they want to get that extra track time. They want to learn something for the race on Sunday. And to be honest, I'm not really sure if NASCAR will try to ban Cup drivers outright. I would be really surprised if they took that route. I know there's a lot of arguments on both sides of the fence, and before what came on here, I was actually looking up the official rules for Cup drivers in Xfinity and Truck Series races. Right now, if you're a full-time active Cup driver, you can only run 5 Xfinity races max and 5 NASCAR Camping World Truck Series max. And also, they ban Cup drivers from competing in any of the Xfinity and Truck Series playoff races or the Xfinity Dash for Cash events. And the only Cup drivers who are an exception to the 5 race limit is if you have less than 3 years of full-time NASCAR Cup Series experience, then you can basically run in as many Xfinity races as you want. So if they wanted to further, so I think if they wanted to further crack down on Cup drivers, because I don't see them banning them outright. I think if they wanted to further crack down is to get rid of what I just said.
Mm.
If you're a full time Cup driver, it doesn't matter if you're a rookie in Cup. you have to stick to the 5 race limit. You can't run, you can't run 6, you can't run 7 Xfinity races. I see that as potentially, just being realistic here. I think that's probably going to be the next thing if they decide to have a further crackdown. Instead of being a full-time Cup driver for more than 3 years, if you're 1 or 2 years, you can't run no more than 5 races. So I think that's probably the most likely route.
First of all, I missed this. Seth giving you a compliment there, Josh, the race fan that never sleeps. And then, you coming in here. Of course, we appreciate it. I know it's after 1 a.m. for you. Thank you so much for staying on with us. We'll try not to keep you too late here. Seth said, hate it, have always hated it. Also, it makes no sense. IndyCar drivers don't race in the new lights. F1 drivers don't race in F2. This brings up a good point. Brad Perez, somebody that I've got a tremendous amount of respect for, Kobe. I know you feel the same way. He chimed in. He disagreed with Brock. He likes seeing the Cup drivers come in. He thinks it benefits the drivers in those series to have a chance to race against those drivers. And I'm certainly not going to sit here and criticize him for holding that opinion because, he is far more qualified to talk about that than I am, considering he is actually part of a Truck Series team and has even gotten a chance to race in trucks this year. But, he said when I brought this point up about Lewis Hamilton going to F2 or Scott Dixon going to Indy Lights, he also said something that, if we want to compare it to the open wheel road, because Josh, like you mentioned, there are some veterans that used to be in the Cup Series or tried to make it in the Cup Series, didn't really make it, are now back in Xfinity or are now back in trucks. Whereas if you go to the open wheel road, it's pretty much all teenagers and early 20-somethings trying to get to that level. Let's make sure that the Xfinity drivers or that the Xfinity cars and truck cars are never faster than the Cup Series cars, which is what we've seen the last few years with the 550 horsepower package. And I am in total agreement with him on that. It's driven me crazy watching the timing sheets and even, the ARCA cars, I think in Michigan were faster than the Cup Series cars one year. I mean, it was just absurd to think about. You have, teenagers in ARCA trying to get so much as to the Truck Series or Xfinity Series, and they're going faster than the supposed 40 best stock car drivers in the world. So I'm totally with him on that. But I don't think it's a complete BS analogy or anything like that either. This is a series that brands itself. Like I mentioned, the slogan is names are made here. So why are names that have already been made there going back there to take a spot? I mean, to use the example from Tyler Reddick, he's taking a car that was driven by Jay Buford earlier this season. That's one more name that could be in the series trying to be made there that is not made there because a name that was made there twice, 2-time Xfinity champion, is taking his place. So even when they don't win the race, I saw people say, it's more satisfying when, David Gilliland goes out at Kentucky in 2006 or Jeremy Clements goes out at Road America in 2017 and they beat Cup drivers to get those wins. And I get all of that. But regardless of where they finish, they're still taking a spot from the grid that could have gone to an Xfinity regular or an up-and-comer to give him or her that opportunity. So it's just something that I've never personally been a fan of. I understand both sides of it, but it's not something that I enjoy. Kobe, you have something to add to that?
Oh, yes. And if you look at the entry list for the Xfinity race at Charlotte, and you look at Big Machine Racing, driving the number 48 this week, it's Austin Dillon who's in the car. So another NASCAR Cup Series driver.
And that was something that was also brought up as well. There's a loophole kind of, which I think Brock was alluding to in his article. The drivers have the limit. The team does not have a limit. But I think even Reddick, you were saying, Kobe, it's 3 years. Reddick obviously won the Xfinity Championship in 19, so this would be his third Cup season. So I guess Reddick could be unlimited. But theoretically, what Big Machine could do is have Tyler Reddick in the car for 5 races, then bring Austin Dillon into the car for 5 races. Then you could bring another Cup car or Cup driver into the car for 5 races. And that car always has a Cup driver in it. So it's a loophole, like I said, of a team getting around that.
It's not fair. It is not fair at all. And it's a bit like, it is literally like you're being held back in school. That's what it must feel like as well. And you feel like, when you have to repeat the same grade, that these guys know every trick of the trade. They know every trick of these cars as well. So they're obviously going to be a lot faster than the people who are just learning it as well. And it's unfair. I mean, I cannot imagine the war that would happen. I mean, yes, it was in the 50s, 60s, and even in the early 70s. It wasn't that uncommon to see F1 drivers racing F2. Of course, Jim Clark was killed in an F2 race at Hockenheim. So it's not that unusual to see for them to see them doing it differently. But then it sort of got brought in with Bernie as well, that drivers in F1 stuck to F1 and only F1. There was a contract as well. And that's why when Bernie left, Fernando took the opportunity to fly off and do the Indy 500 in 2017. So it became that bubble for the European fans, at least, that if you did a top world championship, you only did that series. WEC opened the door that you could go and do Indy and Formula E and World Endurance Championship and start mixing up. F1 then started doing it. You could do the Indy 500 and you can do F1. What's happening now as well is the fact is that with NASCAR as well, it's becoming that on the same weekend you can do as many races. I mean, if I was, give you an example, William Byron, you just mentioned as well. What's stopping him running the Cup Series, running the Xfinity, and then running the truck? Nothing. He could run all three, get so much track data for himself, and then end up winning the Cup race because he's got more time out there. They need to limit, I think, not only the amount of races they can run, but say, okay, this weekend, you want to run in the Xfinity Series, you only run in the Xfinity Series. You're not allowed to race in the Cup Series or the Truck Series. You limit them as to where they want to race. I think that'll shut it up quite nicely because you've still got that loophole of you can have a Cup driver in your car, but he's only racing in that series. You're not allowed to move around. And then, if that happens, put one of the Xfinity car, drivers into the Cup Series car. Have it as a trade around. See what they do in a one-off race. And that way we get the juniors coming up and having a go, and the Cup Series still get their things running the Xfinity. Yes, it removes the track time, but I think that's a fair compromise. You want to race here, you're only allowed to race here. And I think that's a good, both manipulative, threatening deal that I think they should go for.
And Josh, I wanna piggyback off of something you said. I'm not sure if you noticed, but at the beginning of every NASCAR season, all of the NASCAR drivers, they have an opportunity to declare which series they want to run for driver points. And I think one way to close the loophole, I know right now, it was just like Tyler Reddick winning for Big Machine Racing. He was able to earn that car points in the owners championship. I think a possible way to shut down that loophole would be if you're yes, obviously, Reddick's not scoring any points in Xfinity because he's a full-time Cup driver, but maybe NASCAR drops down the hammer and says if you have a Cup driver in that 48 car, you can also not score any owners points as well. And that's really why we're seeing Cup drivers running for smaller teams now in Xfinity series, but still supported by a Cup team, kind of like we saw Cole Custer win for Bobby Daughter's operation. That's going to help him out a lot. And last year, we saw Kevin Harvick run for BJ McLeod Motorsports, helped him out in the owners points as well. And that's really the motivation for some of these smaller teams in the Xfinity series linking up with these Cup teams and getting Cup and getting Cup drivers. Really, it obviously improves their program, which is one of the positives in this. But I think if they want to further crack down with the Cup drivers in those races, be like we know you're already not earning any drivers points, but if you're in this car, you can not earn owners points as well. I think that would really be the end of it.
Yeah, great call.
Well, and Seth comes in here with another good point. If it has to happen, at least it was a team like Big Machine instead of a bigger team. And I'm with you on that, Seth. I think this is certainly preferable to Tyler Reddick coming down for RCR or Cole Custer getting in the Stuart Haas 98 or whatever the case may be. It is tremendous for their respective teams, Bobby Daughter and, Big Machine here, that they were able to experience those wins, but it's still not a perfect situation, if you ask me. Another argument that I think people have used when they talk about Xfinity drivers wanting to race against the Cup guys, I think Brock would probably side with me on this. I would just say Racing Cup. I don't think it's impossible, even in the charter era. Daniel Hemrick did a couple of races for RCR. Harrison Burton made his Cup debut with the Gaunt brothers. So there are opportunities, I think, for teams like Spire or Rick Ware or smaller outfits like that if you want to get a taste of a Cup series. I know it's harder in the charter era. I think that was something that a friend of mine said to me. But you can't really say that in this era, 10 to 15 years ago, maybe. But of course, my response to that would be just get rid of a charter system and your problem is solved. But I'm sure that's easier said than done.